I'm PJ Lucchese. I am 18 years old. I am a senior at Middlesex, and I am from Sudbury, Massachusetts. Well, I kind of gave a good synopsis of my early life in my chapel, I feel like, with the whole blindness thing, so I'm not going to put you guys through that again. I don't know. I've always had a pretty mellow kind of childhood, per se. You know, I went to public school in Sudbury until 4th grade, where I then switched over to Fenn, which was an all-boys school, which was 4 to 9, in Concord, right down the road, and I loved Fenn. Fenn was great. Kind of turned me on to acting and other such things like that. And then came here to Middlesex. That's educationally what happened. We adopted a boy named Carlos from Guatemala when I was in 4th grade as well. He's 10 now. Great addition to the family. And we now have a new little puppy, Duke. He's a black lab. And I don't know how old he is. He's very small though. And he's going to be 80 pounds eventually, which will be fun too, but puppies are always, you know, cute. And like, if I know that people are either struggling or like are going through something, or there's something where I feel like I can help, like I always will kind of have that in the back of my mind to try to be cognizant of those people. And I think that that's one thing where I try to help out as much as I can with things. Sometimes I don't really have a position to help out, but I think that with my close friends specifically, I try to think about that a lot. I personally am like, I'm from here. I've always lived here my entire life. I've lived in the same house. You know, maybe something that had to do with Boston. I think that, you know, maybe like a B for like the Red Sox or something like that, something dumb, and I would probably put it somewhere that you couldn't really see it, but it would also be like something that for me it's like close to home at the same time. I think that one thing that Massachusetts gets a bad rap for is that the people are jerks, which like, yeah, I'll concede that. Like there's the whole notion of like being a masshole, and I kind of take that to heart, and I say like, yeah, like that's kind of me. Like, yeah, I love getting dunks in the morning. I go to Dunkin' Donuts, I have the same order. You know, I go to Red Sox games, like I go to Celtics games. I'm really into sports, love the Pats, like, and it's one of those things where from the outside looking in, it's like, ooh, like people from Massachusetts are jerks, which I will like I'll acknowledge, like we're not the friendliest people, especially on the roads. But I think that one thing with that too is that a lot of people that I know from here and a lot of people that I know from my town, they really care about the people in their lives, and I think that there's a sort of loyalty. I think that we saw it with the Boston bombings where, you know, people from Boston really banded together when the going got tough, and I think that that's one thing where I've always admired that about where I live. I love history. I love World War II specifically. Believe it or not, that's always been a really fascinating point for me, just in my schooling, where that's what I want to learn about. Like, that's what I want to know a lot about, where I'll watch a ton of movies, I'll read books. My junior paper was on something obscure that happened in World War II that I just felt like would be really interesting for me to learn about. And that's one thing where a lot of people actually don't know that about me. Just the idea behind that period of time in our country has really interested me, just with the mobilization of peoples and just the ideas of how America kind of, to an extent, had to lead while also going into that war. And, you know, a lot of the things that the people in that war did were really impressive, like the whole idea of landing on the beaches in D-Day. Like, if you thought about that now, like, no one's going to run into a hail of gunfire for their country. Like, you can never fathom that, and I think that that's always been one thing where the psychological aspect is, like, that's fascinating to me. I'm like, wow, like, people actually did that. That's insane. Like, I just talked about how, for me personally, yet again, it's like my chapel, for me personally, like, little things in life matter a lot more. Like being able to see that in this room the wall is yellow or whatever shade of orange, yellow-ish this wall is, like that's something that's always resonated with me, and it's little things like that where, you know, there was a time in my life where it was believed that I was never going to be able to see that, like with sunsets and other such things. Like I really hit that point because I've always loved, like, if I'm in the Cape, like we'll go and we'll be on the beach and we'll like watch the sunset, or like we'll be out fishing and we'll be coming back in for the night or for the day, and we'll see the sunset, and that's like one thing where I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Where like other people are like, yo, like we're driving the boat back now, like focus on what we're doing here, when I'm like kind of enamored by that, what's going on. And I think that, you know, it gave me a new appreciation for things, and that's what I really wanted to hit with my college essay. But yeah, I mean, a lot of things that I've gone through in life have been great. You know, I love my family, I love my friends. I'm really happy with where I've ended up, I think. I think that personally, at times, I tend to think like, wow, I like regret doing this aspect of things, or, you know, I wonder what would have happened if I just stayed in the Sudbury public schools, or hey, I wonder what would have happened if I had not come to Middlesex. And I think that there may be a slight regret there, but then I kind of try to put it back into perspective of saying like, you wouldn't have met all these people. And I think that that's one thing where that flips that regret into something more positive, where like I really value my friends and the people that I'm close to, so I think that they're what keep me going. So with the whole regret thing, I try not to think about that as much. But I don't know, I can't say I don't have any regrets. I think that saying that would just make me a complete liar. If I can go through life and say, okay, yeah, I have regrets, but I'm happy with where I stand, then, like, good, like, 2 thumbs up, like, I'm happy, like, great. But I think that it's also one of those things where I definitely have them, but I try, like, I'm the type of person that really pushes them back in my mind if I have them. So I had applied to Fenn, and I was like, you know, this will be interesting to see what happens. And so we end up getting the letter in the mail. It's a big envelope, so you're like, oh, big envelope, like what's going to be inside? The brochure, and then I take out the thing, and it says like, congrats, like you've been admitted to Fenn. It's from the headmaster, Mr. Ward. And I burst into tears. 4th grade PJ full on cried. I cried for an hour. I went up to my room and I bawled. And my mom was like, what's wrong? Like, this is so great. Like, you don't necessarily have to go. And I was so sad, but like, I started making friends at Fenn. Like, I knew a few kids who lived in Sudbury who went there. Like, getting there as a 5th grader, it was daunting, but it was one of those places where I really felt like I could be myself, and I really felt like I could express my feelings and like who I was as a person, rather than feeling like I had to act and put up this facade of like, oh yeah, like I play sports, I, you know, do this, do that, I love sports, this and that. Where at Fenn, they made you act. You had to be in plays. And I went in and I was like, I'm never gonna like this, I'm gonna hate it, this is gonna be terrible. And I show up and I ended up loving it. I was in 2 musicals at Fenn. I was in all the middle school plays, and it was one of those things where I was like, what the heck? Like, I never would have done that, and I never would have known that side of myself. And obviously when I came to Middlesex, I had kind of a lull in that acting and singing thing. I finally tried out for small chorus my junior year after Chad said he wouldn't be my friend anymore if I didn't try out. Tried out for that, and then I just came from musical rehearsal, so like I'm in the musical this year too, it's exciting. I feel like, you know, it's all coming full circle. So my little brother Carlos, he's from Guatemala, which is a small country in Central America. And so there was a situation at this camp that we go to in Sudbury. I work there, and my sister was a counselor in training there. And so this girl walked up to him one day and started saying to him, like, your brother and sister don't actually love you, you're adopted, like your parents, your brother and sister don't care about you. And in that situation, it kept happening, and it kept piling on, and he was getting really upset. And I work at this place, so I couldn't say anything bad. Like, I couldn't tell the girl to like shut up, because I worked there, and it was one of those situations where like I heard about it and I had to go and talk to him and separate those two, and it was really hard for him. It was one of those things where it hit him hard, and he kept asking like, you guys like love me like your brother, like I'm your actual brother, and I was like, yes, like you are. And it was one of those things where I had to tell that girl like, hey, you cannot say, like, you can't say that. And I had to keep my cool. And I think that, you know, the hardship in that is like keeping my temper settled, I think, but also it was really hard to see my little brother, who we love dearly, you know, it was really hard to see him in that state. And I think that that's always been one thing where I have always, you know, wanted to protect him and be the brother that will protect him and will make sure that he's okay. And I think that I struggle with that sometimes because I'm always here. I'm at Middlesex a lot. He really never sees me because he's in bed when I get home. And it's one thing where I try very hard to get home and see him and like be able to be there and be a present older brother, because he knows that my sister and I are both leaving. Like, we leave at the end of this year. Granted, we're going to be close, but we're still not going to be living in the same house under the same roof with him. Like, and he knows that, and that's really hard for him. And I think that in that, it's just the fact that I need to learn how to plan my time more around him. There are a few things. Height, definitely. I am not 6 feet. Like, for everyone out there, I'll broadcast it. I am short. And you know what? That's like... That's an insecurity, I think, for a lot of guys, where it's like, okay, I'm like short, like people don't like girls don't like short guys, where it's like I'm also kind of sitting here like I don't really care what people think about me. Like, yeah, I'm short, but I'm still a human being. I still have feelings. Like, though I may not be 6 feet tall, that does not change the fact that I like am a person. And I think that that's one thing where, like, yeah, there's an insecurity there. But I think that it's also one thing where I'm like, I try not to think about it that much. I think the real insecurity for me is eyesight. There will be so many times where we will be at a hockey game here where people will be like, oh my god, did you see the puck? Like, you see what's going on? This is insane. And I'm like, no, no, I can't see anything. Like, I can see, but I can't see well. And I know that, and like, I think that a way of combating that is I kind of make fun of myself for being blind. Like, if I can't see something, I'm like, if I'm blind, like, geez, come on. Where it's like, that is actually an insecurity of mine, where people wouldn't think that it is, but it kind of is, where I try not to think about the fact that I can't see as well as other people. Like, I think that it limits me more, especially with driving too. You know, people will be like, oh yeah, like, I drive at night fine. Like, sometimes at night, like, or at dusk, like, I struggle to drive because just my eyesight's bad. It's not that great, so I struggle with that, and people are like, oh, like, what are you talking about? Like, you can drive right now, like, stop. And I'm like, I get kind of nervous to do that. Like, I'm a good driver. I consider myself a good driver. Like, yeah, I do stupid things sometimes, and I'm, like, an asshole about it, but, like, I consider myself a good driver. I think I'm fine. Like, if you ask anyone that I've driven, I think that they would consider me a fine driver. But I think it's just the eyesight aspect where I have to be laser focused on the road, and if I get distracted, I get nervous that I'm putting the people in the car with me in jeopardy, and if that happens, that's not something I want. I don't want people getting hurt.